Citizen Vigilante, when violence becomes the message. Flint West reporting. Something caught our attention recently. Not one film, two. Within the space of just a few months, two newly released thrillers landed with something in common that goes far beyond action, explosions, or body counts. Both fused explicit political messaging with narratives built around vigilantism or ideologically motivated violence. Now let's be disciplined. Two films do not make a trend. They don't prove a movement, but they might be the first visible ripple, the kind of early alpha signal that's worth paying attention to before everyone else notices. And that's exactly what this brief is about. Not proving a conclusion, simply documenting an observation. Ironically, none of this started in a cinema. It started on X. Section 1. Elon Musk reposted the entire feature film Citizen Vigilante onto the platform. Almost overnight, a relatively obscure independent film became an international talking point. The discussion wasn't just about the movie. It was about why Germany's FSK had declined to grant the certification required for normal commercial theatrical distribution. That immediately raised bigger questions. Free speech, censorship, migration, crime, vigilantism, institutional legitimacy. Whether you agreed with the decision or not almost became secondary. The conversation had already escaped the film itself. Naturally, curiosity took over. So we watched it. Then, shortly afterwards, we watched another recent release, The Passenger. Different director, different cast, different political direction, yet somehow remarkably similar architecture. That's when the pattern appeared. Section 2. Let's begin with Citizen Vigilante. The story doesn't take place in America. It takes place in Europe. The precise location is intentionally ambiguous, although it evokes parts of Central or Eastern Europe. That detail matters, because the protagonist is deliberately written as an outsider. Michael Sanders is an American. Former United States Army, financially independent after inheriting wealth from his late father's real estate business. Notice what the screenplay is doing. Military training explains competence. Wealth explains independence. The audience never has to ask why this man is capable of doing what he does. The screenplay already answered the question. Then comes the political contrast. Europe is portrayed as struggling with violent crime and institutions that appear increasingly unable or unwilling to deal with it. Into that environment walks an American outsider equipped with both the means and the mindset to act. Inside the film itself, the public celebrates him. Blog posts, viral videos, public admiration. He becomes a folk hero, not because he follows the rules, because he gets results. And then comes perhaps the most revealing line in the entire film. He says he's doing this for the people, until the people can do it for themselves. Whether viewers see that as empowering, dangerous, or deeply uncomfortable isn't the point. The point is that the violence isn't merely action, it's carrying an argument. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 3. Now compare that with The Passenger. Completely different political direction. Completely different protagonist. Jiman Hounsu plays Hassan, a medically trained Somali refugee now driving an airport shuttle in Minneapolis to support his wife and young son. Again, pay attention to the biography. He's medically trained. That isn't there for sympathy. It becomes part of the engineering of the screenplay. Later, that medical knowledge directly influences the hostage situation. Without it, the story doesn't work. Meanwhile, Lloyd, played by Cody Smith-McPhee, carries out a politically motivated airport bombing before forcing Hassan into a desperate journey as his hostage. Again, the violence isn't random. It's attached to ideology, attached to grievance, attached to political dialogue, different politics, same narrative architecture. Section 4. Which brings us to the observation. Viewed separately, these are simply two thrillers. Viewed together, something begins to emerge. Neither film treats violence as pure entertainment. Neither resembles John Wick. John Wick is beautifully choreographed, stylized, personal, revenge, pure cinematic craftsmanship. Politics barely enters the room. These films are different. Here, violence becomes the delivery system. It becomes the language through which the screenplay debates migration, institutional failure, radicalization, justice, agency, legitimacy. The violence isn't the destination, it's the vehicle. That's the distinction. Section 5. Cinema has always reflected the anxieties of its age. The vigilante films of the 1970s wrestled with urban crime and social disorder. The great action franchises of the following decades gradually shifted toward spectacle, competence, mythology, and increasingly elaborate choreography. But these recent films appear to be steering back toward explicit political argument. Not hidden beneath the surface, not tucked away as subtext, out in the open. Does that prove we've entered a new era of political thrillers? No, absolutely not. Two films prove nothing, but they do justify paying attention. That's what alpha signals are. They don't announce themselves with certainty. They whisper. If more films released over the next year or two continue placing explicit political argument at the center of narratives built around vigilantism or ideological violence, then these may eventually be recognized as early examples of a broader movement. If not, then they remain two unusual films released close together. Either outcome is entirely possible. So the disciplined conclusion remains unchanged. The films are not the story. The pattern is the story. And if that pattern continues to develop, contemporary thrillers may increasingly use violence not merely as spectacle, but as the principal language through which they argue about the condition of modern society. Flint West signing off.